You noticed that he's picked up smoking again, didn't you? I glanced at the stack of photos, looking for the telling image that had given my brother away. I shrugged. There are worse things that he could be doing, I replied. The investigator was only interested in getting a rise out of me. He didn't care if Pate was smoking cigarettes or anything else. He only wanted to see my reaction. Sometimes still I think there are people out there that feed off of the negative energy that they create, especially those who've ended up in positions of authority. These guys, they're like vampires. I knew that most of the investigators had extensive educational backgrounds in psych, but I'd heard more than a few jokes that it was a requirement on sign-up that they take pleasure out of pushing people's buttons the wrong way. Unless you needed someone tracked, that is. Tracking is the one thing the investigators could do well, without question. Good thing for me, then, that the department had more than a few teams available with too much time on their hands. I leaned back in the antique office chair, causing the springs to squeak in protest of my sudden movement. Has he been talking to London? I asked, knowing the answer already, but seeking confirmation of my suspicions. Mr. London finds them all, somehow, doesn't he? He answered. London made first contact with your brother 3 days ago and has spoken to him twice since then. We're unclear as to Peyton's impression of the doctor. So far, he seems only to be curious. If you speak to him about it, perhaps at home, you'll be able to gain much more insight than we're able to. He scowled at me. If I speak to him about it, then he'll know that I've assigned a team of investigators to him. He won't speak to me at all then, I explained unnecessarily. Does your team feel that London's influence will be strong enough to draw him in? London has always been influential. The outcome of their encounters relies on the boy's flexibility, as has been the case with all precedents. That stated, it would be unfortunate if he crossed over. I thought about it for a moment. Thanks for your work so far. Keep me updated on developments. If there's nothing else you're dismissed, I said, quickly stacking the films and inks and handing them back to the investigator. He nodded politely and left the room, closing the door behind him. He might have smirked, but I might have been paranoid. If Pate crossed over and began working for Mr. London and his people, things could get worse for all of us. London's influence was spreading and his ideas taking root in the darker corners of society. He was also gaining the support of more than a few exceptional researchers, scientists, and most importantly, the gifted ones. My brother didn't know it, but his adaptive flexibility scores were off the chart. I'd switched out the results of his exams, of course, giving him an average randomized final value sheet, so he'd never worked to develop his abilities. Now at 16, he'd made contact with London, prompting an agency investigation outside of my own private one. The agency wouldn't be able to trace my manipulation of the ink work. I was as good at my undercover craft as I was a pilot. I worried, however, that the agency's teams would move in too soon and ruin everything, and all of the safeguards that I'd set up to protect Peyton would be for nothing. It was time for us to talk then. Change was a breath away.